Story 1. When I was in high school, one of the schools in our country had a powerhouse football program. Consistently one of the best teams, consistently got a bunch of players recruited to top schools, etc. Promising athletes would move to the district for that school and transfer from their own schools. Our cousin went to that school, and we went to this football team booster club fundraiser, literally just buying spaghetti for dinner. The plates were something like $5 each, but a lot of the parents were writing checks for much more. That single damn spaghetti dinner fundraiser raised over 60 grand in one night. And my cousin said they did these types of fundraisers all the time for the football team booster club. I could not fathom what they were spending all of that money on, and jokingly said that they have to be paying these students to transfer schools. A couple years later, it turns out the county did find that the booster club was bankrolling apartments in the neighborhood, cars, etc., to convince promising players from other schools to come to their program from around the state, and in some cases, even from out of state. All because some people are crazy about high school football. Story 2. Okay, so back in 1977, when Star Wars came out, I was in elementary school, and we were all discussing if Star Wars was better than the black hole. Turns out it was Star Wars, though I was on Team Black Hole. At that time, we talked about Darth Vader and why he wears his scary armor. One kid insisted that it's because Darth Vader fell in a volcano. I believed him because there was no reason not to, and so I told other people that's why he wore the mask and stuff. I then proceeded to forget about the whole thing. 30 years later, I'm watching Revenge of the Sith, and Anakin Skywalker falls into a volcano and has to wear the Darth Vader armor. The movie was okay, but when that scene came on, I just could not believe what I was seeing. I briefly wondered if that 9-year-old who convinced me about the volcano ended up moving to LA and becoming a screenwriter, and then making it happen. Story 3. That Facebook was hanging on to personal information. Years ago, I lost my Facebook because some couldn't handle losing a political argument and reported me for not using my real name and being underage. I didn't just use my whole name, and the age of my account, wedding photos, and pics from my pregnancy and of my baby should have been decent proof of my age. But it doesn't matter. Someone can report you on no grounds whatsoever, and now the burden of proof is on you. The only way to get my account back was to provide personal info to Facebook. My driver's license, birth certificate, bills with my name and address, that sort of thing. Support claimed that once they'd verified my age and identity, the documents would be deleted. I called bullshit and just didn't get my account back. I had people asking if I'd blocked them because I suddenly wasn't in their friends list anymore, and when I explained what had happened and why I wasn't getting my account back, they thought I was paranoid. A year or two later, Zuckerberg is bragging about all the personal info people gave him on Facebook. Story 4. The US government does not want to fix immigration because there's too many undocumented immigrants paying taxes without any way for them to file returns. Many people think undocumented immigrants are all paid under the table, but after working in the payroll industry, I see it for what it is. Restaurant groups put these people on payroll with dummy SSN numbers. What actually happens is that taxes are deducted from their pay and sent to IRS, but the individual, since they are undocumented, cannot claim a tax return, so all that money goes straight to the IRS coffers. Cannot believe that this remains unreported. It's been going on for years. Story 5. Speed cameras in my home city were implemented about 10 years ago. They have some decoy camera boxes and some real boxes containing cameras that get cycled around the city. Initially, they had it super easy to spot fake from real. Real ones had black tape on the back. Some friends and I were talking about them and they were against the program, but oh well, because they are super easy to spot. I was like, they'll get harder to spot, they just made it easy to start with to gain acceptance. Within 2 years, the black tape was painted to match the rest of the box. Still differentiable, but harder. Within 5 years, the first generation of boxes were replaced with identical real and decoy boxes. At that point, it's way too late for public backlash. Story 6. A famous one that came out to be true. Was it that the government could watch your screen and hear your keyboard due to EMF in the 1970s? A lot of people thought it wasn't true. Turns out, there are now projects to allow you to watch screens up to 50 feet away. I forget if they have to be LCD or CRT screens, but crazy anyway. But what's even crazier now is it's open code for foreign governments or hackers or 12-year-old kids. If that is public code released now from the 1970s, makes you wonder what they have now. Story 7. That my ex-wife was cheating on me. All of the people in the circle of friends we had swore up and down that I was crazy, that she was a good-hearted person. For months and weeks, everyone thought I was crazy. They thought we were a perfect couple, always together, always posting photos on Facebook, etc. They never knew her late nights out, her long business trips she took, coming home and running to the shower to clean up. Nothing made sense. The day she served me the divorce papers broke me. One day later, she's posting photos on Facebook of her new boyfriend. To the shock of our friends, they still didn't believe it, till her own father called her out on Facebook for cheating. That got a good laugh out of me, not going to lie. Let's just say I'm not with that circle of friends anymore. If anyone is asking, I am happily remarried to the woman of my dreams. I got a real gem. So in a way, I'm glad she cheated. Story 8. In February of 2014, I was the crazy uncle, screaming on Facebook that what Russia was doing in Ukrainian Crimea was going to spiral into something 100 times worse in a matter of years. Sure enough, 8 years later, we are more or less at war with Russia, and the world hasn't been this tense or unstable since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Never been so mad to have been so right. Story 9. During the 2016 general primaries, I was a Bernie Sanders supporter and had followed politics years before because I'm genuinely interested in political science, and my entire family were big political players in Minnesota politics. Anyways, I followed his campaign religiously, but I started to notice some strange things from the National Party leadership. Everyone seemed to be completely on the Clinton train. Like, I understand that people have biases, or people they prefer as a candidate, but this went above and beyond. I kept seeing unbiased officials completely forget that Sanders was running and were issuing media reports that Clinton had the whole support of superdelegates, or delegates that the DNC appointed by each state to vote for a given candidate. I thought this was strange, but it wasn't until the 24-hour news media began to pick it up in their horse-running coverage that I suspected that the internal organization had deep ties to former Secretary Clinton. After the general election, which Clinton lost, it was quietly revealed that Clinton had bankrolled the entire DNC and turned the organization into her own personal campaign fundraiser. I felt vindicated, but at the same time wholly floored that the DNC leadership threw away the entire government of the United States for a couple $100,000. Story 10. I have followed the UFO phenomenon for many years. I learned to keep it to myself, because so many people think it's just for tinfoil hat wearing people. But now, the US, Brazilian, Mexican, Canadian, and French governments have all confirmed that there has indeed been an inexplicable phenomenon of objects in the air and sea being observed to have extraordinary maneuverability and speeds for decades. Story 11. Russia and their involvement in getting Trump elected. Not saying anything was hacked, cheated, etc., but the social engineering was off the charts. Traditionally extremely left spaces suddenly fully flipped. People who don't know 4chan now call it extreme right. And to be honest, they're more correct about that now, but it never felt like that before. Reddit was also very left-leaning until 2016. Then it turned out there actually was tons of bot spamming about Trump, and then it turned out Russia was running those bots. Story 12. Tried to tell people late 2019 that this flu in China would become something big. Family called me crazy for starting to wear a mask around early 2020 and staying home before there was quarantine. Family thought I was crazy for jumping in this thing called Ethereum just after the ICO. Friends and family didn't believe me when I said Trump would beat Hillary when I had just finished with Bernie's primary campaign. There are a couple more I stand by, but they haven't been proven per se. Guess these aren't conspiracies exactly, but they are positions I had that people thought I was crazy for having at the time. Story 13. We were smoking one night in our college dorm. All of a sudden, I heard what sounded like a TV crashing to the ground. then a bunch of cheering. I said to my smoking buddies that it sounded like someone threw a TV out the window of the next dorm over from ours. They called me crazy and said I was paranoid from smoking weed. The next day, we were all hanging out, and another friend walked into the room and said, "Did you hear someone threw a TV out the window in that other dorm last night?" Story 14. I told my family over Christmas dinner in 2017 that Trump's presidency would be defined by conspiracy theories and white Christian nationalism, and that Trump would attempt a coup before leaving office willingly. I was assured by my centrist Democrat family that that was crazy, that reasonable Republicans would never allow it, blah blah blah. It basically took until January 6th for them to admit I wasn't an insane conspiracy theorist, but was in fact warning about crazy conspiracy theorists. Story 15. The CEO of the company I used to work for and a director of mine would take PTO at the same time fairly frequently. I noticed this because my role required me to collaborate with both of them. At first, it was just a day here and there. Then it became more and more frequent. One night, I came into work after hours because I needed to get my laptop, and they were both at the office working late also. I thought for sure something was going on between them. People denied it and said that was crazy. Their families would also stop by the office, and they all looked so happy, blah blah blah. Those two don't even get along with each other. They're always disagreeing, I was told. But I was convinced that would be the perfect cover. Sure enough, several months later, they both got divorced. The director left her job to work at another company, and they started openly dating each other. Cue everyone's shocked faces and my vindication. I told you, Lisa. I told you all. Story 16. Not sure if this counts as a conspiracy, but I knew COVID was going to be bad very early on, and everyone dismissed me about it. My appendix burst at the end of January of 20. And I was laid up on the couch recovering for the entire month of February. I had a lot of time to surf the internet and saw the stories coming from China about a mysterious illness. I read that they had something like 10% of the world's population in quarantine, and saw the video of people's doors being welded shut. I asked my wife to restock on things we get from Sam's Club. Toilet paper, just in case. She rolled her eyes, but because she's awesome and cares about my mental health, she did it. I went back to work in early March, and everyone I mentioned it to rolled their eyes as well. I was the first person I knew that started wearing a mask. People thought I was weird. Then I remember the night Tom Hanks and Rudy Gobert got it, and everyone freaked out. The stores were empty almost immediately after that. Story 17. Prince King Charles is a prolific prank caller and goes by the pseudonym Frank Garrett when making these crude calls. He calls people around the world and cusses them out using a southern drawl. There's tons of these calls people have recorded and posted on YouTube. If you ever receive a call from a Frank Garrett who makes no sense and repeatedly cusses you out, there is a good chance it is in fact Prince King Charles. The name Frank Garrett has nothing to do with Johnny Frank Garrett. If you have a look at this video from a news piece about the Frank Garrett Center, the comments are nonsensical and all from fans of Charles' prank calls, talking in his famous quotes. The rabbit hole on this goes very deep. On the surface, there has been a cover story made that it's a recording. We believe Charles himself has made recordings of his voice, as well as when he calls to muddle the truth from fiction. I was a part of a prank calling forum that literally got shut down overnight after video evidence of Charles calling was captured. It sounds crazy, but it's true, and the royal family are trying to cover his harassment up. Story 18. About 6 years ago, there was a meme going around which listed a bunch of conspiracy theories. And it was like, if you believe any of this, you're not scientific and we can't be friends. Mostly it made sense. But it said something like chemtrails, and it made things a little complicated because just that word by itself doesn't really mean anything. But the theory exists because of stuff like the time that the army dosed San Francisco with a disease to see how effective it was. And it was a little too effective. There have also been lots of weather experiments, like cloud seeding, which some people apparently think doesn't exist. But the only question is whether it's effective, not whether anyone tries it. My friends were so full of their own mindless arrogance that some of them unfriended me for wanting to have a real conversation about real events, because they think science is when you blurt out stuff without researching it, because you think your brain is infallible. One of them was a well-educated guy who's just evolving into an anger machine. It's pathetic. Story 19. How politicians actually believe what they say. It's obvious they only say things to get elected. Politicians are often the smartest people in the room. They just seem dumb to get votes. Do you really think Trump, a fucking UPenn grad, is that dumb? Cruz went to Harvard. Do you really think Trump is racist and misogynistic? You really think he's actually anti-vaccine, or he's just saying that for votes? Do you really think MTG gives a shit about guns? What's more likely, they really are that way, or they're just saying that to get elected? If pro-choice is awesome and guns suck polled better among their base, they would change their stance immediately. Do you really think Sanders gives a shit about Medicare for all? Then why hasn't it happened yet? Do you think AOC gives a about the environment? Then what happened to the Green New Deal? Why are we all still driving cars when we all know public transportation is better? Do you really think Biden gives a about unions? Then why does he do anti-union things? What's more likely, these people are pandering for votes, or they really believe what they say? Story 20. The scope for something, anything, being a sign that a conspiracy theory was right is whatever ambiguous connection you come up with. It's like at one point or the other, the COVID jab was microchips being secretly implanted. A sign of the devil, a way to control birth rates, a way to suppress voters, an attack on human rights, something Illuminati related, 5G mobile signal activated, chemical warfare from China, etc. The list goes on. Seems like it's just throwing enough mud and seeing what sticks. Story 21. The first COVID vaccines were not safe. Loads of people in my family and friends called me an anti-vaxxer, even though I have no issue with other vaccines. The normal drug development process takes roughly 15 years. COVID vaccines were released for public use in 6 months. The pharmaceutical companies wanted a disclaimer, which was basically, if there's side effects or it doesn't work, it's not our fault. That's a huge red flag if the companies who made it don't have faith in their own products. Story 22. The United States government has secret programs into UFO crash removal and reverse engineering, and that the states have footage of UFOs, now UAPs, from aircraft carriers. I've told a lot of people over the years and got labeled as a UFO nutter. I've had a lot of people apologize after the UAP footage was released on the 19th. Told people it was only a matter of time before someone in the military or a high-ranking official got hit with hurdles trying to investigate, and again got doubted. There's no secret government agencies, they said. Then David Grush came out and testified before Congress. Now, people are begging me for what's next. I hold no grudges, though. I kind of get it. It's scary, but I love space science. It's amazing how much leaked information is online. Just gotta have the resources to tell what's real and what's fake. Story 23. Not a total conspiracy theory, but when my family moved, I switched scout groups to the one in our new city. It was not as affluent an area, so definitely an adjustment. And the longtime leader had just stepped down, so it was a chaotic time. To top it off, I did not trust or like the lady who replaced her. I was a total goody two-shoes as a kid, never got in trouble or misbehaved, but all of a sudden I was refusing to respond to this adult, refusing to participate, and criticizing all her actions to the other scouts. My parents eventually pulled me out, and I had virtually no behavioral issues after that. Years later, I would chalk it up to frustration with the move, and actually felt really bad for the lady. Turns out, she was skimming money from the scouts' meager funds, and may have been neglectful to one of her own children, but can't confirm. I heard she gave up custody to the father, so there wasn't a huge investigation. Story 24. After the 2016 election, I kept telling everyone the economy was about to collapse and they needed to get ready. They all said I was crazy. I believed it so deeply that I moved from my hometown in 2018 because I had a feeling that I needed to live in a more affordable area if I wanted to ride it out. Got a headquarters job with my company. COVID hit just over a year later. Nearly everyone in my old city got furloughed or took mandatory transfers to other areas to stay employed. Always trust your gut.